This is the Super League Timeout Podcast. With your hosts, Michael Hansen-Morris and Jess Smith.
Hello and welcome to the first episode of 2026 of the Super League Timeout Podcast. We've been gone for a month. Not a lot has changed, but as always, we have plenty to discuss. Michael Hansen-Morris, delighted to be joined once again by Jess Smith. First of all, Jess, how was your festive break?
It was relaxing and then a bit manic. How was yours?
Busy. Sports seasons never quite seem to stop. So as much as 2 weeks off from college, I definitely didn't get a 2-week break. But glad to be back. And obviously we had plenty of action in the volleyball world this weekend with the last 16 of the National Shield and the National Cup. We had a couple of upsets, a couple of talking points, and we'll start on the women's side. The winners were Waterloo Thunder 3-1 over Northampton. 3-0 victory for Essex Rebels against Stockport, 3-0 for Mallory against Team South Wales, 3-0 for Durham over Bedminster, 3-0 for Dark Star Derbyshire over Everton Belugas, and 3-0 for Team Side Out Bologna over London Bears. So the Super League sides in those ties advancing rather comfortably, Jess. But then the drama unfolded. London League side Onyx London dumped out potential Super League team for next year in Richmond 3-0 in straight sets, 25-22, 25-20, 27-25. And the team they're fighting for promotion with, the London Giants, dumping out the Super League side, Lionhearts Venerius, 26-24, 25-16, 25-19. So Jess, contrasting fortunes for the two teams chasing promotion from Division 1 South, but a very big statement made by the London Giants.
Yeah, massive statement. And, we've heard this from the London Giants club all season that they have aspirations to be, the best and the biggest club on both the men's and the women's side. So great to see them, putting that statement out there on the cup weekend, playing against a tough Lionhearts Venerius side.
Yeah, Lionheart's missing a couple, but set one wasn't the streaming. They had a bit of an issue, but set two and set three, 16-19, and it was as comfortable as it sounded. Lionhearts had a little bit of a run in the third, but it was just all London Giants, and Venerius not able to bounce back after that disappointing Super League live before Christmas, and they're going to have some things to fix in the second half of the season, Jess, if they want to stay in the Super League.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've seen on socials that they're looking for some additional players as well. So curious to see if that's, going to play out. Are they going to get somebody before the end of the transfer window? And if they do, what kind of impact will they make?
Yeah, so for the women, that will set up some fascinating games. Dark Star Derbyshire again get lower league opposition, but they get a London League side, someone they will know nothing about in the Waterloo Thunder. London Giants, their reward? They get the current league leaders of the Mari Women's Super League, Durham Platinets at home. Mallory Eagles get Onyx London, who are looking to upset teams. And then probably the tie of the round, Essex Rebels will take on Team Side Out Bologna. So probably all eyes on that one, Jess, but some tricky ties for the other Super League sides as well.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. One thing that I was looking at with regards to the results is Dark Star did win in straight sets against Everton Belugas, but it was 22-22, 25-22, 21, and then 20. So it's not mega close, all of the three sets, but not as much of a spread as you'd have thought between a Super League side and like a mid-table Div 1 team. So I'm interested to see what happens between them and Waterloo.
Yeah, I caught a little bit the first set on an Instagram live stream. Dark Star were definitely missing a couple. I think Cadogan through the middle wasn't there. Not quite sure who was hitting on the right side. So probably a little bit of rust. And I think that was a big thing we'll talk about next week, is there was a lot of rust shown this weekend. On the men's side, some upsets and dramatic moments as well across the weekend, as a couple of Super League sides got bumped out. But the all Division 1 tie, Wessex went to Bristol and won 3-1. Newcastle Staffs beat IBB Bologna 3-1 in a battle between North and South, with the two sides potentially promotion candidates as well. Staff's taking that one, having dropped the second set of that one. And then a little bit easier for a couple of Super League sides. London Giants being Onyx London 3-0. Mallory versus London Lionheart. Still a bit of confusion about the score. We believe it ended up 3-1, with Mallory forfeiting the first set due to Ryan Dixon playing despite not being on the score sheet. But the result now showing 3-0. But either way, Mallory advancing and all three sets fairly comfortable. And the other tie, Coventry and Warwick Riga beating Black Country 3-1 as well in a bit of an upset. But then the drama came, Jess. Richmond Docklands surviving a massive scare against the London Giants second team, coming through in 5 sets. Richmond took the first two, 25-21, 26-24, but London Giants second team bouncing back 18-25, 19-25 to send us the distance, but Richmond pulling out 15-12 to avoid the upset. And that's maybe a bit of a wake-up call for Richmond as they move forward, that they take their foot off the gas, they can get caught out.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it's one of those things that sometimes a team goes to another club's second team squad and assumes that everything's going to be easy peasy. You know, you mentioned some rust that a lot of teams experienced at this first match after the Christmas period. So, you know, a mix of those factors. And yeah, I think Richmond just need to figure out a way to, yeah, like you said, keep their foot on the gas and keep things moving as far as spreading out that offense.
And then not so good for the other team down at the bottom end of the Dynamic Men's Super League in Leeds Gorse. They got dumped out 3-1 to promotion hopefuls, the Essex Blaze, obviously a Super League side from last year. 25-17, 25-15, 21-25, and then Blaze closing out in the fourth, 25-23. And a potential promotion candidate for Essex Blaze, a big victory. Leeds obviously a little bit under strength. No head coach in Pete Mikowski, no Nelson Moranga, amongst
No
others
subs.
for Leeds. But an important victory for Essex to just get some momentum into the second half of the season.
Yeah, there was an interesting moment. So I caught, you know, most of the fourth set. As we arrived, there was an injury on the lead side, so there was a delay in the game as they had a 3-minute injury timeout. The player wasn't really ready to go back onto the court, so there was a player just kind of hopping around, but physically on the court so that they could continue playing. Later on, he seemed to have recovered, so it might have just been like a slightly rolled ankle or something like that. So a weird disruption in the fourth. But watching those two teams play, I think, again, a little bit of rust. Leeds went with a really young team, but Essex Blaze as well were missing some key players for them. So I'm really interested to see how they do in the next round, which I'm interested in your thoughts about the next round tie as well.
Yeah, well, before we do that, we'll talk about the last game we've not talked about, as the cup holders had the emergency sirens running full blast against the Division 1 London Aces. The Essex Rebels really struggling, but found a way to win 25-23, 25-19, 25-27, 25-20. And I will tell you, sets 2 and sets 4 were not as wide open as 19-20. London Aces were ahead in the fourth set, I believe, 16-15. And that's where Sirens really sparked. But the Essex Rebels finding a way, despite one of the best passing performances we will see all season long, as number 22 for London Aces, Charlie Flanders, passed a 2-8-1 on 16 attempts against the Rebels, but it wasn't quite enough for the Aces. But what a cut run they had. And they provided some wonderful thoughts on Instagram about their opponents pre and post game with Jess as well, which is something I know we were both chatting about in the week as a bunch of B and C grade students that they played.
Yes. I mean, if you haven't checked out the Aces Instagram page, you definitely should, because they always come out with some crackers, whoever manages their social media. I will say that they are a hero of our own social media manager.
Yeah, hat tip to the Aces, and obviously they're mid-table in Division 1. And they were talking about, was there much point going? Well, they definitely proved there was a point in that game, and they made the Rebels work for it. And that will set up the quarterfinals. All of these will, with the women as well, played in the middle of February, the weekend of the 14th and the 15th. as we get the Essex Rebels taking on Coventry and Warwick Riga, Mallory Eagles playing Newcastle Staffs, Wessex taking on London Giants, and then the one you were referring to, Jess, another upset alert. If you're Richmond Docklands, you've got to travel over to Chelmsford to take on the Essex Blaze. And you're talking about promotion candidates. Essex Blaze want that, and that will be an important game in their season to try and get some momentum and again prove that they are Super League worthy team.
Oh yeah, definitely. They will see that as a clear opportunity to play another team in Super League. They performed well against Leeds. They will take a lot of confidence from that, and I think they'll go out there thinking that they can definitely win that match against Richmond. So we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, and for the other Super League sides, upset alert. You don't want to get caught out, and this weekend proven if you're just slightly off your game, there's enough depth and quality in Division 1 to cause problems. But we'll have to part that cup for now, Jess, because that's a month away. And instead, we'll kind of reflect on the first half of the Super League season on both the dynamic men's and Mari women's Super League side. Obviously, you were unable to join us just before Christmas. This is what we'd planned for Christmas, but we brought it back with the Super League returning this week. So just before we go into what we're going to do, Jess, just your general thoughts on the state of the Mari Women's Super League as we're effectively halfway through the league season.
Yeah. I feel like in the women's league, there's still a lot to play for. There's some elements that are some teams that feel like they're starting to pull away from the pack, and there's some that feel like they're still kind of vying for a position. So in that kind of mid-table space, anything could happen. So it's all down to what happens now. Are there going to be any key signings between now and the end of the transfer window? Are there going to be any injuries? Hopefully not for anybody this season. And, what teams can keep their players in the best condition between now and the end of the season and not, have any really bad wear and tear, meaning that players aren't able to play at 100%.
Yeah, I think the balance of games is very interesting. It's a little bit more stretched out on the men's side, but you talk about like Newcastle Knights, they've got 10 games to play, whereas Dark Star, Mallow have only got 7. And obviously Newcastle will have some very important Bucks games through the middle of February, as well as playoffs in the Bucks scene start in about a month's time as well. So you're right. There'll be some stretched thin teams in terms of amount of games in really a 2 and a bit month period. But we definitely starting to see a bit of a top 4. So it'll be interesting to see if any one of those bottom 4 can make a bit of a run. And to recap this, we thought we'd bring in something that's definitely going to get me and you roasted, Jess. We're definitely going to get people disagreeing and saying we're idiots. But we're going to do a bit of a tier list. So we're going to rank and briefly talk about some of our thoughts about the first half of the season, ranking the teams in the Mari Women's Super League. So, Jess, we're going to let you go first on the women's side. And as you get that pulled up, just talk about in any order, any team, and why you've gone very briefly with them being in that spot.
Sorry, I have a puppy trying to attack my notes.
Uh-oh. There is a new puppy in the Jess Smith household, for those of you wondering. Yeah. So not only one dog you might get a ventured appearance from, you might see 2.
It's like a surprise guest.
Indeed. Well, we've got no guest this week, so probably better than looking at me and you for 45 minutes for those of you watching on the YouTube.
I know. I feel like I just need to have a parade of dogs happening. I'll just have to keep getting dogs so that the podcast gets more and more interesting as the season goes on, because volleyball is not interesting enough, right?
There may be some interesting moments, but yeah, you're probably right.
No, I'm sure there's plenty of action in the league this season. Ranking time. Oh, this is exciting. Okay. I'm going to start. I'm kind of just going to go in the order that the images are to go here. Okay, so if we start with Dark Star Derbyshire, I feel like, so Hajar's really good. They've got an amazing center. They've got great lib, but they don't have a lot of depth. I really like this team. They scrap so well, but I'm going to rank them as a C because I think the depth is what's going to make them continue to struggle. They struggled at the end of last season, and then they happened to stay in through an incredible amount of grit and determination. But physical determination sometimes can only get you so far. You have physical limits to your body. Durham Palatinate women, really slow start to the season. Opening weekend was a bit surprising for us. And then they had a few weeks off from the league, from Super League, and came out the gates just absolutely raring to go and looking exactly like the team that we thought they were going to be. I'm going to have to put Durham well up here at the top. I think they're going to stay top of the league for pretty much the whole season. They'll probably finish in first place. Leeds Gorse women. So really young team, which we know, mostly juniors. Again, loads of grit, loads of determination. They still have a lot to learn and experience. And for the amount of time that these girls have played together, they're still letting things drop that shouldn't drop. There's a lot of times where they'll be aced because the ball is served between two players and they, haven't decided on a seam before the serve comes. So I'm going to put them down at the bottom. Loads to learn, plenty of potential, could easily make their way anywhere else. London Lionhearts Venarius. So again, one of these teams that you want to root for them because they scrap really well, but they don't. Something is missing. There's some spark somewhere that just isn't there for me. And it makes it really tough because, as a volleyball fan, you want to see every team perform at their best, but they're missing something that's holding them back from performing at their best. So I'm going to stick them down here with Leeds and see how I get roasted for that. So team side up Polonia. Obviously, Lex is now left, and huge congratulations to her. But they've made a massive signing, having Grace come in. So I think she's going to be a massive difference maker for them for the rest of the season. Really interested to see what they do, because I know that Mark would want them to be Final Four, because who else? What else are you going to want? And I think I said at the beginning of the season, this is one of the teams that wasn't in my Final Four, and you were shocked by that, Michael. So I'm going to have to say I was wrong, and I'm going to put them at a B, because they're so close. If they can get everything working smoothly, and if they can keep and build that confidence in each other's teammates, they can easily rocket right to the top or close to it. I don't know if they would beat out Durham Platinums because they're just almost unstoppable at the minute. Mallory Eagles women, they look really good. We were worried about this team before the season started because there were so many changes, and they still have a lot of changes. They have so many different things they can do. They have so many setters. It's ridiculous. I feel like they're good, but could they be better? Could they do something to, I don't know, be sharper almost? Because they're a bit rough around the edges right now. So again, I'm going to rank them with team side out Polonia. Essex Rebels women. This is a tough one because I don't really know how I feel about this team, because sometimes I really like them and sometimes I really don't. It's really tough because, again, I think this is one of those teams that they're not playing to their potential, which is frustrating as an observer to watch and say, well, if you could just tweak this one or two things, it would just be so much better. So I think I'm going to put them as a B. They're kind of like a C plus, B minus type space.
Interesting.
I'm sure that I'm going to get a message from Chenners when this comes out. So that's fine.
You got one more.
Yes, Newcastle women. So Newcastle, I really like their style, the way that they play. And again, this team has loads of potential, but they haven't quite clicked together yet. So still have some ways to go. I'm going to put them in B as well. So I've got no A's. I've got Durham as well up there, and then everybody else is just trying to sort themselves out.
Okay, well, I'm not that far off you, so I will pull mine up. I've got some slightly different rationales, but I'm actually on a very similar wavelength. And for those of you listening at home, watching this on YouTube, we've not talked about this at all. We've kept this away so we could have some discussion. So, Jess, if you just come out of that, and I will then pop my one in as well. Dark Star, exactly the same rationale as you. I think the thing outside of their last game against Essex, where they were well and truly down with the injury bug, in terms of no set in Victoria, Hajar was hurt the day before. They've taken a set in every game. So a huge positive for Dark Star, but what that hasn't related to is wins. This Dark Star team have got one win on the season. Hajar's had a really good year, but for me, they need to find some wins from somewhere. If not, you're going to end up in this relegation playoff 6 and 7. So they've got some room to grow, but the fact that they've not been 3-0'd much this season is a very good sign. Durham, A+, easiest thing on the board of both leagues. 4 games in London / Essex, 12 sets won, no points dropped, have yet to play a true home game. They played opening weekend, was a home game, but they've yet to play at Durham. They've got all their travel out the way. Question is, can anyone get up there with them? Leeds, very similar. For me, they've got some Super League talent in there in the long run. Danielle Shandu's had a good year. Lauren Thorne's had a good year. But they haven't won a set. Average score in a set this year, I think, is 14. It's very rare we've seen them even push a team to 20s. So for me, great to see development. Love to see them get a set or victory this year, but the only place you can put that Leeds team right now is in D. And like you, Jess, I have London Lionhearts joining them, or Lionhearts Venarius.
Interesting.
The last game we did, the Super League Live at Crystal Palace, for me, was going to say a lot about this team. This was a Final Four team from last year. Very few roster changes in terms of core group. Obviously, losing Mallory Porcher down the middle, big loss. But a lot of that group were kind of returning in some capacity. Obviously, a little bit of a lib change, but I don't think that's affected the team a lot. I don't see enough from this team, and I decided this before the weekend, but having watched the Giants game as well, for me, this team is dead in trouble. I don't see enough on there from consistency. I'm not sure they're really overly happy with the production from multiple spots on the floor. That I don't see enough from this team right now. Now, maybe there's a chance to change it, but there's just missing, I think, multiple pieces. I think they're multiple pieces away from staying in the Super League. I think there's now a bit of a gap growing between them and Newcastle and Dark Star, and that's kind of why I've dropped them in there.
Yeah.
Side out, join you on a B. I'm not looking ahead too much. I was more ranking this in the first half of the year. Grace will be a big addition. Obviously, we talked about Lex, but they look really good against Lionhearts on that and navigating the sun and trivial things. They've dropped a couple of points where they probably shouldn't have. But when I look at it, and I'm going to drag them slightly out of order, the game that mattered the most for me is that Mallory game, and they took them to 5. So for me, Mallory and Side Out are neck and neck in how they've looked the first half of the season. Both dropped a couple of wobbles. For me, I think Side Out will end up finishing above Mallory. This is actually the team I'm worried about the most. I think they're missing something, and I can't quite put my finger on it, but it hasn't quite clicked. You took Chloe Allen out of that Dark Star game, and Mallory looked like they were really, really struggling, and they should be a team that's a bit more productive. I think they're missing, obviously, Steph Karoy, as she is now known, obviously formerly Steph Boyce, not being in the lineup meant they've not really found a settled middle rotation. The setting is always a question: who is setting, who that second outside is going to be. Like, it's been very jerky, and for me, I fear for Mallory. I wonder if they will make a change, if they can find a settled 7 that will really give them something. But there's just something for me that potentially will project long term. But they've had a good first half of the season, been solid where they needed to pick up wins to make sure they're a top 4 side. But I don't think they're potential challengers. Newcastle, I'm going to drop them to a C. However, I have them as a high C. And the reason is I still worry a little bit about the passing unit. I still have some concern. Obviously, they pushed Side Out to 5, which was a big thing at home, but they didn't quite close it out. And for me, I think they're not quite ready to make that jump to the top 4 yet, but it's been a really solid season. When you talk about making your Super League debut, they may be still peering over their shoulder with Darkstar and maybe Lionhearts to try and avoid that relegation playoff. But I think there's enough there. Renee through the middle's been really solid. Obviously, she missed opening weekend, so we didn't see her in action, and that's where they probably look the worst. This team are growing, but I also worry how the back end of the season looks with the amount of games they've got. And then, like you, I also have Essex Rebels not quite making it to the A tier. Slightly different rationale. I agree they've not always looked consistent. Elena Dupre, we heard a lot in the preseason. Could she be the MVP? We've not seen really that out of her in some games. We've seen it a couple of games. Arguably against the best teams is where she's looked the best, which is definitely pleasing. For me, my question with Essex is the depth. If someone isn't available, someone gets injured, someone's ill, what's coming off the bench? And Alex Chinnery's not really trusted the bench in the Super League a lot. Leela Whitaker had a breakout game on Saturday in the Cup, but I don't think he really wants to make changes in any other position outside of Leela. If a middle needs to go, is someone ready? If they lose McKenna, I think there's a big issue. How do you, is there anyone that could fill Tara's spot on the opposite? I'm not sure. Like, that's the question I think I'm projecting on Essex is where does this depth look like it's coming from? And that's kind of my question. And when they played Durham, they took a set, but it didn't look comfortable. Obviously, they swept Mallory, so that's why I've got them slightly above Mallory. But I've, like you, that consistency and depth is, for me, kind of keeping them out of the A tier.
That's fair. That's interesting that we've come out fairly similar, but slightly different rationale.
Yeah. So I think it'll be interesting. I think the big thing with the women's side is right now it looks like the top 4 are cut and dry, but I think we would both be surprised if something didn't catch us off guard at some point in the second half of the season.
Yeah, there's always something, which that's the most amazing thing about sport in general is just you never know what's going to happen because you don't know who's going to be on or struggling on a specific day against a specific team.
Yeah, indeed. And obviously we will preview the first weekend of fixtures at the back end of the podcast. But for now, we will take a minute and flip over and talk about the dynamic men's Super League. So now we're going to move on to our rankings of the dynamic men's Super League. And I'm going to start with the league leaders, and that is the London Giants. And I'm going to put them at the top of the B tier. I think this is a bit more around potentially my expectation for them. I think obviously they're top of table, but they have played a couple more games, and that's definitely factored into it. They're not a clean top of the table as such. And I just think they've just dropped some points and dropped some sets at the wrong time from what I'd kind of expect from this roster. I think all firing, they're going to be in the high A star tier, probably still the favourites to win the Super League, but they've not shown it all the time through the first half of the season. So I'm just going to grade them down ever so slightly. It's still a very high B for me, but nonetheless, not quite getting to that A tier yet. Next up at the bottom of the screen, Durham. I think Durham are going to be the team to watch in the second half of the season. Obviously played without Sean McQuiggan through the first half of the season. Results haven't been what they would like. They've got a lot of ground to make up to potentially make the top 4, but they had that result just before Christmas, pushing Nottingham to 5 sets, and I think they've got a chance. And it'll be very interesting to see, but it has been a bit of a slow start for Durham overall. Newcastle. I'm actually going to drop Newcastle all the way up to the A tier, and I did a lot of thinking about this, Jess, just because of the lack of games they've played. They've only played 5, but the only loss they've got is to Mallory in 5 sets on opening weekend. And this is a team that's just made another little bit of a leap from last year. We knew this men's Super League was going to be competitive. And right now, I think you'd be crazy not to have Newcastle as a top 4 team. And if anything, they're on that upper echelon. They win a couple of games in hand, and all of a sudden they're right back level with Mallory and Newcastle. So for
Mhm.
me, it's been a very well-deserved side up there. I do have them ever so slightly ranked behind Mallory, but I think they are neck and neck at that first half of the season. That opening weekend was big. Mallory have looked really solid. Obviously, lost to Giants to get the first loss, but losing to London Giants on the road in 5 sets is still a good result for Mallory. They are really your de facto team at the top if you look at points per game and all those stats. They've obviously still got to work in a Zach Omashemi, Nathan Fullerton combined lineup. And they do have to find a way to play around the absence of Captain Logan Clark, who returned to the US. But I think for Mallory, a really strong heart, and you can't ask for much more from Mallory being in title contention in the cup quarters, only 1 loss on the season. It's been a really solid start. Richmond, I was up and down about this, but for me, it's a D. And again, this was decided before the cup, but obviously a bit of a cup upset, as we talked about earlier, Jess, against London Giants' second team. And it's a similar question to Durham. Where are the wins going to come from? Your 1 win on the season that you got, one of them was against Leeds Gorse in 5. The other win you got was over Durham Platinums. That was in 5. So you've not won a game in 3 or 4 yet. And it seems like you don't have a solution to win sets when Artemi's not serving well and getting 7, 8 kills a set. Now, Pearson still has helped, but for me, I need to see a little bit more. And right now, I think it's an uphill task to avoid the relegation playoff. And joining them in the relegation fight is, of course, Leeds Gorse. Now, for me, this is a very different D to what I gave the Leeds women. This is you haven't got results yet, but there's a lot of promise. You've done a lot of work to potentially argue you could. If you look at expectations and purely expectations, there's an argument you put them low B, high C. I'm looking at it as a broader Super League picture, but I will say the fact that they've pushed a lot of teams, taken sets in games, pushed a lot of sets into 20s is a lot of promise, and I do see Leeds picking up a win this season. Essex, I'm going to put B, but it's similar to your B from the women's side. It's a B minus C plus kind of conversation. I think obviously there was a lot of uncertainty to start the season with the coaching change, with Ewan Fraser eventually taking over. They obviously did a lot more recruitment and push on the women's side than they did on the men's side. They've relied on some youth, but the youth and the university students have kind of held up in big moments. They've got a couple of big victories like beating Durham. They obviously got blown out on the road to Giants. They took a set. I think they took a set off Mallory. I can't remember all the way back to that first Super League game and if they got one off Mallory or not. But again, I've seen some promise, but they are going to be in and about it for the top 4. And then this was probably the one I initially started to rank, the one I had a surprise. But when I really dug into their season, I may argue have maybe had the most disappointing season compared to their potential. And that's Nottingham. And I've got them in C, just above Durham, but only just. And for me, the question is this a top 4 team? And the answer is, I believe they are on talent. You look at Bucks, they're flying. Yeah, I don't see it in the Super League. Right now, I don't see them making the top 4. I think it's a very difficult uphill task because they've played 8 games and they've got a lot of teams behind them like Newcastle, like Durham with games in hand. They obviously struggled with Durham before Christmas. And I think this should be a team that arguably could contend for the title. And we saw that on opening day against London Giants. They beat them 3-1. And I've just not seen that next step now having a full roster. They didn't quite have on opening day because Tate Sandvig wasn't fit for opening day. I think they've got a bunch of talent. I think they've got a bunch of depth. And I could see them winning Bucks. But I could see them winning Bucks and not making top 4. So from a Super League standpoint, I think I'm slightly disappointed by Nottingham. And that's why I've got them in the C tier.
Interesting. Well, you'll be excited to know that my rankings don't look very different to yours.
Good for us, bad for controversy.
Yes, but we'll see how we go. We'll see how we go. I'm just gonna do this in random order because that's how I feel
Why
right
not?
now. So we'll start with Leeds after having watched a little bit of their match against Essex Blaze at the weekend. I think I agree with you. They have a lot of potential, and in some ways they're really solid, but they just need to, I guess turn it up a notch, figure out what can they do. You can't always just rely on Marangwa. You've got to, you know, get other things working. You can have the best defense in the world, but if you can't put the ball away, what's going to happen? You can only dig so many balls in a match. So, yeah, but for Leeds in general as a club, I really like the development aspect of what they're doing, and I'm really interested to see what happens to them over like the next 5 years. Um, Nottingham, I really agree with you. This team could be so good. And you're right, we saw it in opening weekend. I saw them opening weekend and I was like, wow, they're gonna be like top 1, top 2. Like they're gonna be well up there. But for me, the reason that they're and I'm gonna go with this as a kind of middling to low C because it's the consistency. They've had some matches. They've had a match where I think they missed no serves, and then the next match they missed like 30 serves.
Yeah,
So
good point.
where's the consistency? But it's not just the serving, it's the attacking, it's the defense. They're a bit all over the place. So it's that consistency that they needed to figure out. But you're right, they've got the talent, they have some really incredible skill, and I'm interested to see if they have the same squad next season, assuming that they stay in the Super League. What will they look like then after they've played together for a year? But with all
And
these Bucks matches, it's crazy that they're not there.
how many are back? How many are final year university students? That's always some of the downside of university. You may not get some continuity, but we know they do develop well and bring talent through year ones, year twos that may not be seeing the court right now. Definitely training and will be ready.
Yeah.
And while we're on it,
Uh,
shout out to University of Nottingham women's team who are crushing Division One North and probably are going to be in the Super League.
oh yeah. Well, they're definitely going to be in the Super League, so that's fine. Everybody knows it. It's good. They are really good though, and I've told you this off podcast before, but in my personal opinion, had that team been in the Mari Women's Super League this season, I think they'd have finished top 4. They'd have been in the Final 4. So I'm sure I'll get something. Somebody will give me some stick for that, so that's fine. Mallory Eagles men. This one was really tough for me because there's a lot that I really like about the squad, but I don't think they're playing to their potential. I'm gonna put them. We're gonna go with a low B.
Okay.
It's. I feel like they haven't captured the same spirit that they had last season, and I don't know. Is it the mix of players that they've lost and who they've replaced them with? They don't play in the same style. But I feel like last year, when things got bad, they never gave up and they always scrapped. And this season, it feels like it's not that they don't have the passion that they want to win, but it doesn't feel like they're really drawing out every ounce of anything they can draw into their bodies. They're not putting it all on the line when they're on the court.
Interesting for a team that's effectively top and dropped 8 sets in 7 games, but
I
I
know.
respect
I
it.
know. I feel like they could be so good. Like, to me, in my head, when you're talking about pure talent, when I watch them and London Giants play, and yes, it went to 5 sets, okay? Don't get me wrong. But it should feel every point should feel like a battle between those 2 squads. And
Okay.
on that note, talking about Giants, I completely agree with you. Giants are not they're not playing at the level that you would expect them to play at for the talent that they have. They've got professional experience. They have players that have a ridiculous number of years of experience. But again, they're not consistent and they don't always look like a team. There are a lot of times when they start to get into trouble, you see a player reaching behind them for a ball, or they're running across one another because they don't trust each other at all times. I think it's when they can figure that out and get that dynamic right, they will be really, really good. Essex Rebels. I am really disappointed with them this season. They could be better than they are. Which, easy for me to say. I'm gonna go they're in the same sort of bucket as Nottingham. They're Something's not working, and it's not a dig at Fraser for anything, but not having a coach and being a player coach, it's not the same.
Agreed.
It's a struggle. Yeah. And I think that's just holding them back because they're just missing that little bit of extra outside feedback, especially during a match. Because when your coach is also your captain and they're on the court, you're not going to get the same level of feedback that you would from somebody watching on the sidelines that can see every aspect of the game. Durham. I'm just going to have a bunch of teams stacked down here at the bottom. I want to put Durham like here.
Low end C,
between a C and a D. Okay, the little shadow is going with a C, so we'll just stick it there. So that's fine. Again, when we saw the lineups and we were talking about the players ahead of the season starting, I had such high hopes for the squad. I thought this was going to be really exciting. I thought the Durham men's and women's team were going to be similar in terms of performance. And they're miles apart. They might as well be they are in different leagues, but they should be in completely different leagues. It's crazy. Richmond is a weird one for me. I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to stick them in D because you're right. If they don't have Artemi, if he's not firing, if he's not, doing 7 aces in a row, or what was it, 5 aces and 2 insane backcourt kills.
Yeah.
What do they have? Where do they go? And it's that they're struggling with because he's the spark. They've got Shukri on the outside, and I think he's a great player, but he doesn't output the same level as Soldikov, so they can't rely on him as much. So it's just, how do they solve that problem? And then Newcastle. So I really like them this season, and I'm going to go with like a really high, almost A+, A star. So I'm quite excited that Neil came back, and I'm not biased because of that time that I commentated with him because it was a lot of fun. But genuinely, like watching them play, but watching all of them play, they look like they're enjoying themselves. And as an observer, as a fan, it makes the game more enjoyable. But then they do crazy stuff, like let me jump flying squirrel dive over one of my players because he's on the floor and I need to set this ball. Or I'm going to go and roll and run from the back wall of the court back up to the net and suddenly get a block. It's that passion and excitement and joy of playing. I think that it just translates into them looking relaxed isn't quite the right word, but they look at ease when they're playing. And it just, it translates very well. So they have a good ethos and some really good skill. And I'd love to see them, you mentioned they've only played 5 games so far. So they've got quite a few in hand to say that they're mid-table right now. Where can they end up? Are they going to come out in the second half of the season stronger than they started the first half? And if they do, I would expect them to be in Final Four again anyway at this point, I think. Because Nottingham, Essex, Durham, I think they're going to struggle. I might be wrong. Durham might not struggle now that they've got. I've forgotten his name. That's good.
McQuiggan.
Yeah, now that McQuiggan's back.
Well, we're assuming he's back. We saw him as a blocking sub just before Christmas for 1 point, so we're assuming the month off has helped.
Yes. So, I mean, maybe, but it's still, that's a big mountain to climb in a short space of time. So, yeah.
Well, there are our tier lists. I'm sure we'll hear plenty about it. Let us know your thoughts in the comments or via socials, and we're more than happy to get your feedback. And just before we talk about it, something else is going to get released a little bit later in the week, but we'll give you the exclusive here on the Super League Timeout podcast. Is our, well, at least mine, team of the season or the team of the first half of the season. Obviously, no player of the month awards this year, mainly because of how the season split. Some teams are playing one game in a month and it would have been chaos. So I will start on the men's side since we just talked about it. My team of the first half of the season: Joel Martinez, Hamza Uauchi, Logan Clark, Artemi Sildakov, Nelson Moranga, Nathan Fullerton, and Angus Henricks. For me, setter is probably the hardest one. I don't think there's a setter on the men's side that stood out. I think everyone's got slightly different qualities, but I look at Joel Martinez, and for me, I went on the fact that Malou's got the most efficient offense in the league officially, or statistically. And Martinez is one that you saw when he wasn't on the court for Mallory, what an impact that had in that first set against Giants. And I think of all the setters that have had impact, it was tight. Like, he could have gone. Griffin's had a good year. I think Nathan Hall's developing well. I think Pearson still has actually done a really low-key, efficient job at Richmond, starting to distribute the ball in different areas. Middle, I think this is probably the easiest one. Hamza's the MVP. No needed. The second middle, I think there's cases for so many people. Christo Banchero up at Newcastle, Rafa Vine at Essex, Lyle Costa. I think Joel Petrie's had under the radar first half of the season at Durham, but I went with Logan Clark. He obviously won't make it at the end of the season, but I think when you look at efficiency, Logan was hitting nearly 600 for Mallory. He just didn't see a lot of the ball. 2.5 sets. He should have been set a lot more. That's probably the downside for Mallory, but he was super efficient. Outside, Artemi, he has low moments, but who wouldn't want him on the team if you need an option on the outside? And I went slightly controversial. I went with both Nelson and Nathan. I think slightly foreshadowing, Nathan's played more opposite, so as in the first half of the season, but I can't leave either out. Nathan is arguably the best non-lib defender in the league. If you combine his blocking with his digging ability, I think we are going to see a lot more of him outside. I've not got any intel. I've just got a feeling we might see Nathan playing some outside in the second half of the season. And then Nelson's just held that Leeds team together. Despite missing a game, he's second in the Super League in kills. He's got 117 in 20 sets on 11. He's hitting 36.5, like 7% more than anyone else not named Hamza, which is ridiculous. And I just couldn't find a way to leave either out. So I've kind of gone Nathan as an opposite that was going to play outside, and Nelson. And then lib, I went with Angus. Again, I don't feel great about a lib pick. I think of the libs, he's probably been the most consistent on serve receive. And I think he's probably him and I'd say two other libs, Ollie Quick at Nottingham and Jesus Izaguri Rodriguez from Giants, have all dug up balls that you wouldn't expect to get dug up. But I think Angus has been the most consistent. The person I actually really struggled missing off was Ollie Tuck at the outside. If I had to purely go by position, I think Ollie Tuck might squeeze into my second outside. I think he's been tremendous. You look at some of the serve receive numbers, like Ollie Tuck's passing better than pretty much any lib in the league, and he's had a really efficient offensive year. I think there was another argument for Rob Morgan. I think James Ledbury's had a good year. I think Matthew Edwards as well from Durham. But I think Ollie Tucker's kind of in a breakthrough role. For me, has had a sensational year. He was good last year, but he's taken step. He's sixth in the league in serve receive at 229.
Wow.
And the rest of them, in terms of attempts, he's well up there. And I think he's been exceptional. So Ollie Tucker's the one I probably would have had the hardest time leaving out. But that is my men's team. Jess, feel free to roast me.
I mean, saying that you're going to go with Nathan when we're talking about the first half of the season in the expectation that he's going to play outside, because why would you not have Nathan and Zach on the court at the same time? I mean, we've seen it happen with power opposites the world over. So why not? Why not see it in the Super League? I don't have a lot of argument about your lineup, to be fair. I do think the shout for Ollie Tuck is quite good, though.
The set is the one I struggle with. I think there's a lot of parity. I don't think anyone stood out. Maybe my eyes aren't good enough, and someone will probably tell me that's right. But yeah, I think the setting was probably the hardest one of both teams.
I mean, yes, I can kind of see it, but I think Martinez is a good shout because his distribution is consistent. Not so consistent that it's predictable, but he's got good distribution. He gets to balls, and he's pretty good in defense as well, which helps.
Yep. Okay, and on the women's side, McKenna Smith, Hayley Gillifan, Alexis Diaz-Infante, Chloe Allen, Isabel Decker, Chloe Thomas, and Ari Sierra were my 7 picks. McKenna Smith, I think, as much difficulty as the men's setting was, this was easy. I think there's some good setting options in the women's league this year, but McKenna stood out. The variety of balls, the fact that Essex are able to diversify the offense and have so many little wrinkles and tricks, which, yes, Alex Chinnery loves to run, but he needs a setter that can run them, and McKenna can pretty much set any ball in the league. The speed and the tempo made that easy. Hayley Gillifan leading the league in efficiency through the middle, 39 kills on 67 swings with 4 errors, I believe. Hitting a 478. She's been a standout in her return to the Super League. And then I got tricky and cheated and put Lex through the middle. Obviously, it's an argument to play out Oppo as well with Lex, but for me, it was an easy way to squeeze her in the team. She was playing a lot of middle. The diversity that she'd give that team, but also she single-handedly one side out the game up in Newcastle, playing in both positions. I think she's a huge loss to the league. Middle was probably is the position with the most depth in the Super League this season on the women's side. I'll touch upon the people I missed out in a minute, but I felt that was the right thing and the versatility Lex would give the team. Chloe Allen, you don't need to say much about Chloe at this point. Super efficient. I believe she leads the outsides in efficiency. She leads them in kills. We know she's super solid on serve receive as well. I believe she's probably top 10 in serve receive. She's 6th in serve receive reception. The person topping it is who I've put alongside her in Izzy Decker. I think she had a bit of a slow start. There was an argument which of the two Durham outsides I'd go with, but I think the serve receive element for Izzy, I think their efficiencies and what they can provide in Izzy Decker and Ali Ruffin are very similar. But I gave Izzy the little nod as the second outside. Opposite, Chloe Thomas. Again, someone that hasn't always been the most consistent. She's had up and down moments, but in the big games against the best teams, she's delivered, both on the blocking element of it. And we know how good a block team Durham are. But Chloe's up at over one block a set. I think she's 3rd in blocks per set in Super League. Super efficient on the attacking end as well. So it was hard to leave her out. And then Ari, again, really solid for Mallory. Not going to make many errors. 2nd in Super League in serve receive reception at 223. She's nearly 0.1 over any other libero in the league. We know she's going to get to balls that she shouldn't do. Disappointing Mallory haven't tried a little bit more with Ari in terms of maybe some structure on serve receive to get her some more balls. She's only passed 107 in 21 sets. Like you would think maybe Mallory experimented in moving Ari around on serve to try and get her a few more touches, maybe the way they would have gone. Maybe they're keeping that. But people that I didn't quite go with, Lindsay Legg as the libero option. I think she's had a really good debut in the Super League. We've already talked about Hajar. And Elena Dupre in the big moments. I talked about it in the tier list. I think she's got the talent. I just don't think we've seen it enough. Opposite, I very much considered Claire Kellum, who I think's had a breakout season as a hitter for Mallory. I just don't think her efficiency's quite there, but she's also that heartbeat of energy for Mallory. But I think she's was someone I thought about. And then the middles, you could go so many ways through the middles. The one I think will make it by the end of the year with Lex popping out is probably Renee Kilo up at Newcastle. She missed the opening game, so she only got 4 games. So for me, that was an kind of a convenient excuse to kind of not have her as high up. The other one, Ellie Schrader, for her blocking at Durham, I think she's made a huge impact through, and that decision will be really difficult. But that was kind of my thought process on the Mari Women's Super League first half team of the season.
Interesting that there's no Carla Molly.
I think that was quite easy, to be honest.
Okay. I think she's been really impactful, personally. Maybe
I
not.
agree. I
Maybe
just think
not.
others have been more impactful.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And no mention of Grace for the second half of the season?
Well, that would be projecting, but yes, in theory, you expect Grace to be up there. But I think the middles, and my takeaway from the first half of the year, how deep the middle position is in the Super League, because you've also got, as much as I talked about that, I didn't even talk about the second middle that Essex have got. As much as I gave Haley a shout, but Essex have had Savannah Spitzers, the third in Super League in hitting efficiency at 36.8, and she's also been a serving demon. You look at Jaden Scott's being efficient for Mallory. Casey Bell's had moments for side out. Like the bulk of the hitting efficiency this year has been through the middle. The outsides and the opposites haven't really shone. And when you look at the hitting leaders, that kind of shows.
I think this is an interesting change since last season, because we saw last season. So Lionhearts is a great example, obviously, with Mallory Porsche, just dominant through the middle, almost helped push them into that Final Four position. And I think other teams were like, okay, let's take some notes. And now everybody's like, let's stack the middle, because this is where, on average, your highest hitting efficiency is almost always going to be through the middle, because you can run it so fast and there's so many variations on what you can do, especially in the women's game, because men don't really run slides and that kind of stuff. But, there's about 8 different hits that a middle player can do.
Yeah. And I think that's the difference between the men's and the women's. The men's is very outside opposite heavy, and the women's has gone very middle heavy this year. And I think it's the two contrasting styles are super interesting, because obviously there is a lot of coaching amalgamation within the clubs, with so many clubs having men's and women's teams, that the philosophies are and the ways they've found successes are very different this year.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
So that leads us to what's next, and that is a return to the Super League. So men's side, Mallory Richmond, Newcastle Leeds, Leeds Essex are the opening 3 games. Mallory Richmond 12:15 on Saturday. Newcastle Leeds 4:30 on Saturday, and then Leeds doubling up with their game against the Essex Rebels on Sunday at 3:30. Which one of those, Jess Smith, catches your eye the most?
I want to see. I'm a bit torn on this. So I think on the one hand, I'm very interested in the Newcastle versus Leeds, not because I think it's going to be a particularly strong contest, but mostly because of what we were just saying about the Newcastle men's team and how they have been playing this season. So I'm curious to see how they handle this particular match against bottom of the league. But on the flip side, based off of what happened this past weekend in the Cup, I think Leeds versus Essex Rebels is also going to be quite interesting. That could be spicy.
Yeah, I think the only downside for Leeds is that it's coming off the back-to-back. But I think that might have been one that, yeah, they might have learned some things on opening weekend. Can Essex bounce back and have some efficiency? It'll be super interesting. Over on the Mari Women's Super League on Sunday, the only game Leeds Essex on the women's side, that game at 1:30. But 3 games on Saturday, all 3 starting at 2:30. So you've got plenty of viewing options. We have Dark Star Derbyshire taking on Durham in a rematch of opening weekend. We have Mallory Eagles taking on Lionhearts Venerius, and we have Newcastle Knights taking on Leeds Gorse. I assume your eyes are probably trained to seeing how the league leaders get on in that rematch, Jess Smith.
I'm very much expecting the outcome of this particular match to be completely different to opening weekend. You know, we talked a lot about Durham, and I'm expecting this to be a complete shutout. It'll be interesting to see how they deal with the style that Dark Star play with, now that they've come together a bit more.
Yeah, I think there is a chance we see 12 sets played this weekend in the Mari Women's Super League.
Okay.
I think, yeah, you look at it, Durham, you can't think they're going to drop a set the way they're playing.
Mm.
I've not seen enough from Lionhearts the last couple of weeks. And then that would need Leeds needing to pick up the first set of the season. And I'm not sure Newcastle away and Essex at home is the team that are going to give them a set.
I mean,
I hope I'm wrong.
Newcastle have been good, but they're not always consistent. So if they have a wobble, maybe that's what happens. But to have a wobble at home that's a big ask.
And I think my concern with a couple of these teams is they didn't play last week. Leeds being one of them. Ironically, Newcastle wouldn't, but we know they would have definitely had a bit more in terms of reps, in terms of training type stuff, scrimmage with the university side, that a lot of the teams in the cup look rusty in the first set or 2. So how that now translates to play like Dark Star. Okay, you got a game under your belt, but you didn't get a great result. You got a couple of players missing. We know Dome took a full strength team. Like, is there a little bit of some of these things that rust shines through? A couple of teams not playing in the cup. Obviously, Nottingham off this week, so they get to wait another week. That'll be kind of an interesting storyline for the first couple of weeks, I think. But no doubt, now I've predicted 3-0 across the board. We'll probably get a reverse sweep and we'll get full of drama. And then I'll look stupid for the multiple time this season.
I don't think so, because I mean, if you're looking at that match lineup, I completely agree with you. I think it's highly unlikely that we will have any additional sets played. So we'll see. But I am very curious about Leeds versus Essex this weekend in the men's side.
Well, there is your card marked. Sunday afternoon. Get the Leeds Essex game on and see if Jess Smith and my inclination is correct. And even if we're right or wrong, we'll be back next week to wrap up the first week of the Super League action. It's been a bit of a longer one, Jess, but good to recap the first half of the year with you. Appreciate you hopping on as ever. And we will see you both next week from the Time Out Podcast.